A father and daughter sit outside as he narrates the details of a case he couldn't solve as a detective. He prefaces with a monologue on how dangerous love can be. Christian and his wife Leonora lie in bed when messages on his phone wakes them up. She questions him on who could be messaging him at such an odd hour, but he trivializes her worries, explaining it's work stuff. The phone buzzes again, so she turns on the lights and demands he gives her his phone to check the messages. Clearly hiding something, he lies that it's confidential information pertaining to his friend. She tries to snatch the phone from his hands, so this mofo sacrifices it by throwing it against the wall. We all know where he belongs. The following day, both complete their morning exercise as the detective gives some exposition on the couple. Christian was a trained craftsman but became wealthy when he started a construction company with his friend Peter. Leonora was a talented violinist and was accepted to a music conservatory, but she had to set aside her career when their son, Johann, became chronically ill, but now 18, he's starting to recover. Leonora comes in after her run and cheerfully greets Johann and Christian, who are taking breakfast. When their son leaves to prepare for school, Leonora apologizes to her husband about her behavior the previous night. He does the same. She offers to send his phone to the repair shop, but he pockets it, insisting to dispose it himself. Leonora drives her son to school, but he requests they stop to pick his crush, Martha. Meanwhile, Christian arrives at their latest construction site, where his friend Peter alerts him that the IRS wants to see the company's accounts. They seem to have done some under-the-table deals that could be a cause for concern, but his friend assures him that everything should be okay. After they tease each other, Christian makes his way to their architect Zania, where they romantically lock eyes. They meet at a secluded part of the site, where it is apparent that Christian is having a workplace affair. The simp even calls her the prettiest woman he has ever seen. Not sure if Leonora would be too happy if she heard that. She was the one who sent him the message at 4 a.m. He lets her know that it caused a problem between him and his wife. Zania gets upset that he didn't read it. The message detailed an ultimatum. He either picks her or Leonora. She misread his lustful look earlier as him picking her. He explains that he will break things off with his wife, but since his son is still recovering, he can't put such stress on the family. She leaves a little aroused but upset. Meanwhile, at the local washing bay, Leonora reluctantly pays for a discount card to maximize her money. She goes back home and calls their network provider to get Christian's phone records, but she's unable to, however. While looking through his Facebook friends list, she comes across Zania's profile. Upon closer inspection of her profile, she sees that several workplace pictures of Zania and Christian have been posted. Leonora's female intuition tells her something is amiss. With this new information, she prepares for an event held by Christian's company. When her husband comes home, she tries to be affectionate towards him, but he's more focused on getting ready. At the event, Christian gives a speech that praises Zania's architectural vision and even brings her up to soak the applause while his wife watches with disapproval. Later on, the party is in full swing, but an eagle-eyed Leonora follows Zania as she makes her way to the secluded office area. She watches on in horror as Christian and Zania are engaging in a transaction, but not the right kind of transaction that brings money, if you know what I mean. He's too into it to notice his wife standing there, but a more aware Zania looks her straight in the eye without feeling shy. On the car ride home, a mortified Leonora quietly sits there. Her husband picks up on it, but she just tells him she's tired. The following morning, Christian builds the bonfire for the Midsummer Festival with his neighbor Kim. The topic of divorce comes up since he has experienced one himself. Kim advises him to just tell her if he wants a divorce, as it is better for both parties. Christian makes his way home, prepared to tell his wife the situation, but she beats him to the punch and confronts him about it, even revealing that Zania looked her right in the eyes. He tries to explain, but really, can he? She brings up his shady dealing, manipulating the company's stock to make extra money to pay for Johann's treatment. Leonora has already been to the lawyer for consultation. She would be considered as an accomplice. But if she was to go to the police now and report him for fraud, she will not be implicated. With this silver bullet, she threatens to tell if he tries to leave. They had a deal to stick together as a team, and there is no going back. Later at work, Christian tries to nullify that bullet by asking Peter if there is a way to pay back the money they defrauded, but it's not possible. He meets up with Zania and lies to her that he's ended things with his wife. Now that things are serious, she asks him to meet her mom. Christian later meets up with Kim to carry on their work on the bonfire. He informs him that Leonora will not let him go because she has dirt on him. So, he suggests that he find someone to support her through this hard time, since he can't be the shoulder for her to cry on. As their days go on, a depressed Leonora sits in her room thinking about what she saw at the party, but something snaps inside of her. So she decides to follow Christian, who makes his way to her old best friend Cassandra. She informs him that Leonora is not the type of person one can just leave. The old friend details an incident with one of his wife's ex-partner, Mike, who died in a mysterious cliff accident. The rumor that circulated around the small town pointed to Leonora as the culprit. She had a motive, as Mike was trying to move on with another girl. Equipped with this new information, he makes his way to the location of the incident, where he manages to call Sonia, Mike's new lover at the time. She explains that she's certain that Leonora was watching them from the bushes and was the one that killed Mike. But she was not considered a suspect, as she had an alibi of being at music practice, which was confirmed by her teacher, who heard her playing. While he talks on the phone, his wife creepily stands behind, staring, but disappears when he turns. Christian finishes his rounds at Xenia's place, where he meets her mother. Leonora watches from a distance while they have fun. She meets him back at the house, where he confronts her about killing Mike, but she dismisses his accusations. The discussion ends when she angrily kicks him out and swaps their cars when he refuses to end things with his mistress. She claims the house and their son as her own property now. This causes Christian to also enter savage mode. He goes to the office and makes sure he is seen by the cleaning staff, while also leaving his phone behind. He then takes one of the company's vans and waits for his wife to take her usual jog through the woods. When he spots her signature red waterproof jacket with black pants, he puts the car into high gear and meets the front of the car bonnet with his wife's body. When he hears moans and groans, he puts the car into reverse for one more pass, which does the job. With tears in his eyes, he rushes back to the office and makes sure that the cleaning staff see him again. Christian gets home late, where his son asks about his mom's whereabouts, but his shaken dad doesn't really answer, and then leaves to his room. He takes a shower while crying before going down to get a drink, but he quickly drops it when Leonora appears behind him, asking what he's doing back at the house. Christian thinks that's her ghost, but that is dispelled when Johan comes down and interacts with his mom. This mofo bodied the wrong female. In shock, he lies to her that he broke things off with Xenia, hence his return. As he cleans up the broken glass, she reveals that she has started jogging a new longer route. It dawns on him that he killed the wrong person. He speechlessly looks out the window as the blue ambulance lights flash. The following day, a distraught Christian paddles in his canoe in utter disbelief at the crime he has committed. Later, his wife gives him back his car keys. As he leaves to drop Johan off at school, Kim interrupts them and starts discussing the hit and run. Christian quickly leaves while Kim and Leonora continue to discuss the incident. She later goes to the accident location, where she finds out that the victim was a mother of 3 who was going out for a run. Leonora worriedly watches as the police do their work, since it's her usual running route too. She locks eyes with the detective, who instinctually finds her intriguing, but he later follows up during Johan's graduation party, where he gives his card to the couple in case they have any information. A guilty-ridden Christian goes to the scene when he hears that the woman he run over had 3 children. After looking at her memorial, he goes to hand himself in to the police, but he's dismissed by the receptionist, who's busy taking calls. Christian waits at the reception but has a change of heart when he gets a message from his son thanking him for the party. Meanwhile, Leonora starts to suspect Christian when she goes to wash her car, only to find out her card was used on the day the hit and run was committed. She later confronts her husband about it, with evidence of him cleaning one of his vans, looking rather distraught that night. Leonora comes to the right conclusion that she was his target. Their son walks in and clearly sees something is wrong, but his dad sends him away. Christian tries to explain, but she calls the detective to report him. He takes the phone from her before giving information about seeing a Romanian number plate. Leonora uses this opportunity to run out the house. He tries to calm her down, but she takes her phone and leaves. He tries to call Xenia while in a confused state, but she doesn't pick up. Shortly after, the detectives arrive at the house to get more information. After they leave, he receives a message from his wife for them to meet that night at a fancy restaurant. During their disturbing dinner date, a calmer and more calculated Leonora reveals that she will not report him for any of his crimes, but she does request for him to body Xenia. With his mistress alive, she feels like she can't be safe around him. She's willing to be his accomplice to further bond them together. This situation is worse than an episode of Jerry Springer. All they need to get away with the crime is a strong alibi. Leonora reveals that it was indeed her who killed Mike. She left the room, leaving a recording of her playing while her teacher was out. This gave her time to quickly send Mike to Valhalla before anyone noticed. Her plan to kill Xenia is based on this template, so the couple build their alibi by booking a trip, which will result in people seeing them. Later that evening, Christian seeks out but leaves his phone in their room and makes his way to Xenia's place. The plan is to make the murder look like a home invasion gone wrong, but when he enters, he goes off script and stays the night. Meanwhile, Leonora is at the resort strengthening their alibi with recordings of Christian talking. She later starts to realize that her husband is taking too long, so she sneaks into Zinnia's house and then bodies her. Christian opens the door to the bathroom only to see her dead on the floor. His wife coldly stares at him as he rushes to hold Zinnia's body. After a couple of days, the detective inspects Zinnia's house when a home invasion plus kidnapping is reported. They find the place too clean considering the nature of the crime. They manage to get access to her last messages, which was from Christian breaking up with her. This was around the time the crime was committed, further covering their tracks. The detective confronts the couple about their findings, but he acts oblivious about her disappearance. They lie that they have an open relationship, so it's not unusual for Christian to start and end relationships. They used their alibi that they were at the spa at the time he sent the message. After talking to them, the detectives are certain that Zinnia is not alive. They later call in police dogs to search the area, but by this time the neighbors have a gathering at the lake to light the bonfire. Christian is eager to light it earlier since Zinnia's body is in there. As the dogs draw near, he rushes with Kim to light the bonfire. His friend notices a smell coming from it, but Christian lights it just before the police can investigate. They later collect her bones and sell their house. Christian later throws Zinnia's remains in a different river, completely covering their tracks. Things cut back to the investigator and his daughter as he finishes the cautionary tale, but they are interrupted by someone in a suit. Turns out that it's her wedding day, and he was advising her on the dangers of love and marriage based on that case before he walks her down the aisle. They stand prepared to enter the church as the bells ring. The doors open, which brings the movie to an end. So the next story is called The Bad Batch. Arlen has a number tattooed on her neck before being dropped off in a fenced-off area in the middle of the desert by law enforcement. She sits next to the border for a while before moving on. The young lady passes a warning sign which states that from that point on, the laws of America don't apply to the residents of this open-air prison. Arlen traverses the wasteland till she stumbles up on a broken-down car. She sits inside to get out of the scorching sun and begins to look at an old picture. A golf cart emerges from the horizon unbeknownst to her. She only spots it when they get closer, so she begins to run, but they quickly catch up and tackle her to the ground. Arlen wakes up after blacking out to find herself bound and gagged. She frantically starts kicking around so one of her captors sedates her. They then grab a saw and start going to work on her. Shortly after, she finds her arm on a hot grill, and one of her legs gets the same treatment. She's bandaged and chained up while she's unconscious. Elsewhere in the dystopian camp, the lawless inhabitants work out at their makeshift gym. Miami Man watches on while he drinks a chilled can of fizzy pop and turns around to look at the others who also have been turned into dinner. Arlen regains consciousness and tries to escape from her chains, but she gets frustrated when she's not able to. She is dismal given her current situation and listens as a woman's cry can be heard just outside. The young lady comes up with an idea and covers herself with her number 2, forcing the captor to bring her out for cleaning. While the abductor goes to fetch water to clean her, Arlen finds a nice iron rod and conceals it under her body before the woman returns. As she is being wiped down, Arlen sits up and hits her with the rod as she rinses the towel. Arlen gets up and hits her across the face, knocking her captor out. The young lady then proceeds to literally beat the soul out of her. She then crawls in between the scraps and finds a skateboard which she uses to escape the camp. Using her one leg and arm, she pushes herself through the desert till she gets exhausted. The crows start to gather around her to thank the creator for their next meal. They fly away when a hermit stumbles across her and decides to give her a lift. He pushes her till they reach the comfort camp. Some men bring her in, and she sees the hermit leaving just before she passes out. 5 months later, and Arlen is in better shape but is struggling a little bit to assimilate into the camp. She is being given a prosthetic leg which allows her to move around without assistance. Later that night, Miami Man draws a detailed portrait of a little girl called Honey. He leaves her to add the finishing touches while he goes outside to prepare dinner. After ending his prey, he grills the meat for Maria and Honey, but the lady is sick of eating that kind of meat. At a later date, Arlen cuts some model's arms from magazines and pins it on the mirror. She steps back enough so that it looks like she has her arm back as she poses. After that, she goes out to practice shooting with her revolver. When she gets bored, Arlen makes her way outside the camp for a little stroll. Meanwhile, Maria and Honey decide to go to a dumping yard to scavenge some supplies. As they look around, Maria slips and injures herself when trying to pick a mirror. Honey rushes over to get some water for her. Arlen spots their golf cart, and with a look of hatred, she proceeds forward toward it. All the while, the lady checks her injury to see the damage, but Arlen finally finds them and approaches with her gun drawn, asking Maria where they are from, and given her answer, she figures that she's a bridge person. Arlen asks if the kid eats the forbidden meat too, but Maria pleads that she doesn't want any problems and that they are all the same, so she should have mercy. This only gets her angrier, as she rejects the idea that the bridge people and the people from Comfort are the same. Just like they didn't have mercy on her, she returns the favor and ends Maria. Honey watches her for a moment before trying to wake her up, but there is no response. All the while, Miami Man starts to suspect something has gone wrong when they are delaying. Back at the salvage site, the hermit spots Arlen walking ahead with the kid trailing far behind. The two finally make it back to Comfort Camp. Honey sees a rabbit and is immediately drawn toward it. Arlen buys one for her to keep as a pet, which makes the kid happy. They proceed back to her house where she tries to make the kid feel at home, but the kid is wary. Arlen officially introduces herself and tries to have a conversation with Honey, but she doesn't respond. The young lady decides to threaten to take the bunny away from the kid if she doesn't obey her orders. All the while, Miami Man sets off to their last known location to look for them. He arrives to meet their golf cart still there, but Maria has seen better days. He looks around and finds the hermit scavenging a pile of trash scrap nearby. He calls him over and questions him about Honey's whereabouts while showing him a picture. The old man smiles, which gets Miami Man agitated as he becomes more physical. The hermit takes his sketchbook and flips to a new page. He poses and gestures for the talented artist to draw a picture of him. Miami Man has no other option, so he settles down and draws a portrait of the hermit as he does a strange pose. He shows the old man the finished article, he rips his portrait out, and writes the location of the girl on one of her drawings, revealing that she's at Camp Comfort. Later that evening, Honey helps Arlen with her makeup as there's a party at the camp. After they get ready, the two make their way out, and the party is already in full swing. The girl gets a bit disturbed when a rabbit is being prepared in front of her, making her hold hers tighter. They move through the people as the DJ has the crowd bouncing with a banger. Shortly after, the Dream, who's the leader of the camp, comes out with his harem of pregnant women as the people serenade him with cheers and love. The guy makes his way to the top of the giant boombox stage and begins to give a speech about how they all have been deemed undesirable by society for one reason or another. They are the Bad Batch, and they are owning the title. After his speech, his women start to hand out some happy substances. Arlen lines up and takes some. In her altered state of consciousness, she loses sight of Honey when the girl chases after her rabbit. The animal leads her to the Dream, who ends up taking her into his care. Meanwhile, Arlen realizes that she lost the kid, but she's unable to find her in her current state. She ends up wandering outside the campground and into Miami Man's hands, who waits nearby. The following day, Arlen is woken up when he hits her with her prosthetic leg. She is confused as she doesn't remember how she managed to get out to the wilderness from the camp. Miami Man informs her that she's a long way from Comfort and without her leg, there is no way she can make it. With the premise set, he shows her a picture of Honey asking if she's seen her, but she keeps a poker face and pretends as if she has never seen her before. Miami Man alerts her that he will take her to Comfort, where she will go inside and find the girl for him. Before giving her leg back, he alerts her that he doesn't care about anybody apart from that little girl. He then threatens to end her if she doesn't find the girl. Arlen understands the mission as she trails behind him. She later stops for a smoke break, but he puts an end to that. Since they are on the job, she complains that she's thirsty, low-key. The smoking is not going to help with that. She tries to find out the relationship between Miami Man and Honey, but he stays tight-lipped. They are interrupted when a member of the bridge camp comes over, wanting to trade some fuel for Arlen's leg. The stranger prepares to fight when Miami Man gives off hostile vibes, but he reluctantly takes the swap. The guy takes Arlen away while she kicks and screams. Miami Man double-crosses him by throwing his knives, which ends things quickly. Who said you cannot have your cake and eat it? They take the bike and quench their thirst before proceeding on their journey. Shortly after, they are hit by a dust storm, so the guy covers them with a cloth where special yoga is performed in the desert. That night, the two sit around a campfire where she gets Miami Man to open up about his story and what got him incarcerated inside the open-air prison. Just as things seem to be looking good between the two, Arlen gets close enough to take one of his knives. She then expresses her hate for the bridge people because of what they did to her. The Chad does his hard guy move and walks into the knife. They start getting close to each other when a gunshot breaks through the romance and hits Miami Man in the chest. As he grunts in pain, a stranded member from Comfort comes out from the dark, and while keeping the gun on him, he instructs Arlen to join him on the bike so that they can escape. She hesitates for a moment but jumps on the bike. They arrive back at Comfort safely. She spends the next couple of days pondering what to do, but one day she decides to go back out to the desert again looking for Miami Man. Guess she fell for him like that. She walks back to the location they parted ways and begins to look for evidence. She spots his sketchbook and a trail of blood, but she's unable to find him when the trail gets cold. Elsewhere, the hermit sits on a rock overlooking the wasteland and sees some crows encircling something in the distance. So he decides to go investigate. He arrives to meet Miami Man lying face down in the dirt, unconscious. He confirms that he's still alive before turning him over for closer inspection. The old man tends to his injury and makes a campfire while his patient rests. Later that night, Miami Man regains consciousness just in time for dinner. Meanwhile, Arlen takes the sketchbook back to camp, and while looking through it, she comes across Honey's portrait. She decides to use it to create a missing person poster and photocopies it before distributing it around camp, asking if anyone has seen her. After handing them all out and asking all over the camp to no avail, she sits near the Dream's place sulking. During that interval, his pregnant ladies march out of the fortress, and she spots Honey among them, but they both play it cool. It seems like the Dream was taking good care of her while she was in his care, making sure that she was clothed and fed to a better standard. She even had her room filled with toys. In the interim, Miami Man is conscious again and is moving with the hermit, but he is still a bit weak. The old man leads him to his bike and gives him back his cleaver before sending him on his way. He pleads for advice from the hermit, who takes one of his daggers and replaces it with a snow globe. Meanwhile, back at Camp Comfort, Arlen approaches the Dream's mansion looking to meet him, so they let her inside. Unsurprisingly, it's full of pregnant women surrounded by luxury, a complete contrast to the outside. The Dream joins her after having a swim, where she discusses the fact that he keeps everyone safe from the bridge people, but from his observations, he feels like Arlen is not happy at the camp. The boss decides to make her a guest and asks one of his ladies to prepare a room for her. When alone with the Dream's favorite woman, she pretends to need the toilet, where she removes her gun from her prosthetic leg. Arlen then proceeds to bait her to come closer before taking her hostage at gunpoint. She moves with her back to the main hall and requests that Honey be returned to her. They move out of the mansion as the other ladies with the boss follow, holding machine guns. They get on the nearby golf cart and make their way out of the camp. When they get out of firing range, she lets her hostage go and proceeds with Honey. The two ride across the desert, where they are met by Miami Man from the opposite direction. When they stop, Honey runs over excitedly as they both hug each other. She goes back to pick up her bunny before they turn to leave. Arlen caught feelings and now wants all three of them to live a life that is not dictated by the people from Comfort or Bridge. Honey rejects the proposal at first because she offed Maria, but the Miami Man accepts, so she doesn't have much of an option. The movie ends when they celebrate their new family by eating the rabbit, which upsets the girl, but she munches some too. The final story is called Blasted. Stein, the administrator of the Hessdalen Observatory, is out in the caves shooting some content for the Mystery Ladies channel. The administrator is interested in using the platform to showcase the work they do, but Mystery Lady is only interested in the inexplicable lights that have been observed in the area. Some theories state that it's the work of extraterrestrials, but Stein tries to give a more ordinary answer. The two then make their way into one of the caves while Mystery Lady vlogs. Things start to get strange when one of the administrator's instruments starts to pick up abnormal readings. They follow it and accidentally activate a door that definitely seems a little too high-tech to be in a cave. This is a bit too spooky even for the lady. As they proceed inside, she notices a slimy green substance that line the cave walls. Stein walks around awe-stricken with what they have just found. She comes across a device covered in cobwebs, and like a typical scientist, she can't help but touch it. This causes a green static shock between the two, which activates it. An energy blast knocks her back unconscious. Mystery shakes her back to consciousness before resuming the vlog. She really has that content over everything mindset. However, this proves to be a fatal mistake as a possessed Stein tackles her from behind. Events move to the city, where Pell stylishly delivers lunch to some white-collar workers. At the office below, his friend Sebastian nervously prepares for a presentation for Casper Kieland, a very wealthy and business-savvy guy. His best friend Auden brings him a cup of green tea to calm him down, and he gives him some words of encouragement. He excitedly lets Sebastian know that he has organized a surprise bachelor party in a cabin at Hessdalen that weekend. Pelly joins the conversation in time to hear the plans, but the husband-to-be turns it down, stating that he's been carefully planning for the last 6 years to secure this deal. As he thanks his visible, disappointed friend for the effort, Auden alerts him that Casper is in the building. He psychs himself up before entering into the meeting, but all the preparation does not really cover for his lack of charisma. His poor performance makes Casper leave the presentation prematurely. He chases after the big man, who lets him know that he's too basic, and if he wants to play with the big boys, he has to step it up with excitement and far-out experiences. So he invites Casper to the bachelor's party in an attempt to win his approval. He rushes to Auden, pleading for him to put on the best party ever. Sebastian gets home after work and is greeted by his fiancée Josephine, who is excited to hear the results of his big meeting. She tones things down a bit and starts to console him when he alerts her that the deal didn't land, but he assures her that he has a second chance. She informs him that his mother stopped by with some things to inspire their wedding, including their wedding bed. In it was an old newspaper clipping of him and his childhood best friend Mikkel, who qualified for the Laser Tab World Cup. His fiancée is so thrilled to learn such interesting trivia about her husband, but she's a little curious about the status of his childhood best friend, as she has never heard of him. Sebastian briefly informs her that he's still playing laser tag before exiting the conversation. He sits in a room to better plan the bachelor's party, since his career progression depends on it. The weekend comes by, and along with it, the party. Sebastian nervously waits with Auden for Pelle and Casper to arrive at a local pub. The rich guy pulls up in a sports car that runs on some one-of-a-kind engine. After they all admire it, he gives Sebastian a gift to wear. Not wanting to offend, he quickly rushes inside the toilet to wear it, and embarrassingly comes out with a bear outfit. He prepares himself to give a fake happy reaction, but it turns to genuine apprehension when he sees his old friend Mikkel chatting with Casper and the rest. He goes back to fake excitement as he greets him. Mikkel starts bringing up his old nickname Boner, which definitely has an embarrassing story behind it. Casper is interested in hearing it, so invites Mikkel to join him on the drive to Hestdalen. Sebastian berates Auden for inviting Mikkel, but he reveals that Josephine instructed him to do so. The damage is already done, so the group set off and later arrive at their destination. The locals and the workers from the observatory watch them as they pass by. They get confused when they see a disheveled-looking Stein emerge from the woods. They realize that they are surrounded and start to scream when they begin to approach them with glowing green eyes. Meanwhile, in the boys' cabin, the bachelor party is going just as badly as his presentation. Auden has set up a quiz about the groom, and it's not going down well with Casper, so Sebastian tries to spice things up by having them take shots and listen to music. Mikkel plays a song to Casper's approval as they start partying. Sebastian gets a bit jealous, so excuses himself. His old friend joins him, showing him a rare laser gun. He thought that they could play a few rounds like the old days, but Sebastian shuts that down and asks him to tone things down with Casper. Meanwhile, a possessed Stein tries to approach the cabin, but she is repelled by something, so she retreats for now. The following day, Yordi's the sheriff of the area, who also happens to be heavily pregnant, responds to her dad's report of a theft. He runs a shop that is themed around the UFO phenomena, which draws tourists to the area. The missing item is a beer fridge, but the culprit left the beer. At least the criminals are responsible, as they don't drink and steal. Her dad suspects the Gullhellas, who are some local twin troublemakers. She gets a radio call from her deputy Benjamin, who alerts her of a disturbance at the troublemaker's house. Yordis allows him to check out the issues solo, since he's almost completed with his training. During that interval, the bachelor boys have breakfast, where Mikkel and Casper showcase their very questionable handshake to Sebastian's envy. He tries to make one up with his future boss on the spot, but it completely fails. After some deliberation, Sebastian tries to further entertain Casper by suggesting they play paintball to the boss's delight. Auden removes a component of Casper's expensive engine, forcing him to ride in the van. This will give Sebastian more opportunities to interact and impress Casper. The way Sebastian is behaving, one would think Casper is the groom. They arrive at the paintball venue, but the place is empty, so they decide to help themselves to the equipment and get started, hoping to pay when the operators come. Before they start, Auden has them all put their phones in a safe so that no one gets distracted. Mikkel discloses that he and Sebastian were European laser tag champs in their younger days. Casper seems genuinely impressed, but loses interest when Sebastian awkwardly overplays it. As they play, Sebastian shoots someone thinking it's Mikkel, but it's mistaken identity as he's busy unloading some paint into a defenseless Auden. He alerts everyone, so they go check to see if the person is okay. The guys meet one of the Gullhellas twins unconscious on the floor. When they move close to inspect, he wakes up with his eyes glowing green and attacks the bachelor boys. Pelle gets bitten during the brawl, but Mikkel ends it by knocking him out again with the paintball gun. They quickly try to leave the area, but the car won't start. They go to check the motor only to realize that it's missing. At this point, Casper has had enough, so request for his phone so that he can call a taxi and get back to his life of luxury. Auden discloses that the phones too are missing, but the thieves left their cases for when they buy replacements. Sebastian remembers Auden talking about the observatory being in the area, so suggests that they head over there since it's closer than the cabin. He tries to reassure Casper that his safety is top priority, but he doesn't really seem to be moved by his words. With paintball guns in hand, the bachelor boys make their way through the forest to the observatory without much incident. Upon their arrival, they notice that the place is empty, so they decide to let themselves in. Mikkel and Sebastian go in to explore while the others stay outside to keep watch. The duo find a retrophone and make a call to the police station where Jordis answers. As Mikkel starts explaining the situation, the sheriff thinks it's all a prank given the stigma attached to the location, so she ends the call. Meanwhile, Stein and the other twin also arrive carrying a suspicious package. The outside team takes cover and give the duo an audio sign which alerts them to newcomers. They quickly hide in the basement. Stein orders the twin to throw the package in the basement. The duo gets startled when they check and it's a dead body. Stein hears their noise and asks her subordinate to go down and confirm that their victim is indeed dead. The boys overhear the command and quickly hide. Mikkel throws a rat on top of Sebastian to make it look like it was the rat that caused the noise. They continue to eavesdrop and hear the two discussing the whereabouts of Sebastian and his group. The twin uses some sort of hive communication to confirm that the group were at the paintball park. Stein orders him to search the valley and find them. Mikkel and Sebastian evacuate themselves soon after the possessed leave. Mikkel explains what they saw inside to everyone's disbelief. Pelli is happy that it is an alien problem, and not a zombie one since he got bit. When Mikkel looks at his old friend to corroborate the story, he throws him under the bus as he denies seeing anything in front of Casper. But he later admits that there were dead bodies in the basement. They are interrupted when they hear a bus filled with tourists get apprehended by the possessed. The bachelor boys move through the woods in a SEAL team formation, looking out for potential dangers. They get spotted and chased by a group of possessed. Sebastian trips over and gets into a brawl with one, but gets saved by Mikkel, who uses his laser tag gun to headshot the possessed. This causes a green orb to vacate the victim's body. It tries to leech onto Sebastian, but Mikkel shoots it again, erupting slime all over his old friend's face. The duo make their way to the police station, where they try again to explain the situation to Jordis, but just like on the phone, she doesn't believe them. He shoots her with the laser to confirm she's not compromised. She instead detains them on her deputy's request. While inside, the old friends get into a big fight. They are interrupted when Benjamin comes back with one of the twins. The duo gets defensive when they see him. Mikkel shoots Benjamin, which causes green slime to explode to the sheriff's surprise. They apprehend Gulhella 1 and interrogate him. He reveals that the light inside them is a signal from an intergalactic light pulse. The duo also informs Jordis about the corpses at the observatory. She immediately tries to call the police from the nearest city for assistance, but the twin signals others who blow up the observatory, blocking all communications. Benjamin later wakes up with his senses restored. Sebastian suggests they come up with a plan. He assumes that the rest have probably been captured and sent to the location where people are turned. He remembers seeing the location on a map in the observatory where high-light sightings were reported. Before they set off, the duo takes the officers to her dad's place, which is a lot more secure, and leaves them with a laser gun. Mikkel informs his friend that he brought laser tag equipment, but it's in Pelli's car. They later make their way to the car where, after an encounter with some possessed, they get their weapon. They suit up and clear their way through waves of possessed, using their famous combination. They allow Twin 2 to go so that he can lead them to the HQ. Meanwhile, Sebastian's assumptions are proven right, as Casper and the rest were captured in the forest and have now been taken to the aliens' HQ. Casper notices them removing his car's engine and tries to protest, but he's sent away. Back in her dad's shop, Jordis tries to use an old radio to call for help, but she is laughed at when she explains the situation. Shortly after, a bus full of possessed pull up at the shop and try to enter. As they attempt to activate the shutters, the power goes out. Her dad goes to fix it, but he too gets possessed. Back on the shop floor, Benjamin tries to hold them off, but whilst the sheriff attempts to get the laser gun to work, her water breaks, and she gets attacked by her dad. Jordis fends him off with a barcode scanner and lightsaber. Her deputy gets overwhelmed as the possessed busts through the door. The officers have a last stand moment as they rush towards them. Elsewhere at the HQ, Casper has sold out his new friends to save his own skin by promising to get more of his engine for them, because it outputs a lot of power. At this point, Mikkel and Sebastian have infiltrated and witnessed Casper's betrayal. They plan their assault too loudly and get taken into custody when they pop out. Auden gets possessed to everyone's protest, Sebastian sees Casper for what he is when he tries to get him to also betray his friends, but he returns the missing pieces back to the engine, which causes one of the HQ doors to open. A giant alien emerges while everyone bends the knee. It starts to operate the HQ, which happens to be a spaceship. Pelly decides to fire some paintball round at it, which just gets the alien irate. It orders its minions to attack. Sebastian faces Stein while Mikkel fights Auden. After a brief exchange, Sebastian manages to activate the ultimate attack of the laser tag equipment, causing a huge explosion that destroys the light inside everyone, knocking them out. The giant alien falls too, but gets back up and knocks the duo out Mike Tyson style. Auden also wakes up and sacrifices himself by facing the alien alone. This allows the duo to escape. The spaceship emerges from the ground and drops off almost everyone before leaving the planet. Meanwhile, Casper is left alone at a cave where he gets attacked by something that glows green. Back at the UFO store, the officers manage to survive the night as they are surrounded by unconscious people. 3 months later, Sebastian and Josephine have their laser tag-themed wedding. They toast to their fallen friend Auden. It is revealed that the old-time friends have started their own laser tag business as they all run inside to play. Meanwhile, deep in space, Stein finally wakes up. Auden is still alive and tells her that they are heading to the aliens' home world. He hands a gun as he warns her to prepare for war. That brings the video to an end.